Now, I need to say a little bit more about what I mean by the two different contexts. Now, Swami Dayananda uses a term called a cognitive shift. Now, this is a very important term in Vedanta because it suggests that I'm in a way of seeing here, then suddenly there is a shift to another way of seeing. Now, when I was talking before about depending on the scriptures, we're not talking about depending on something other than ourselves. What we're talking about is that we listen to the teaching, and by listening to the teaching in a particular way, an understanding begins to become formed in us. We discover something, we discover the truth of something, and we contemplate it further, we begin to understand it more, and then we start to see life like that. Now, this is a cognitive shift. So we're shifting from one way of seeing, which has been completely determined by the past, by our circumstances, our psychological past, historical, the social setting that we've been brought up with, all of that stuff, cultural impositions and all that stuff, to seeing from an entirely different standpoint. This is a cognitive shift. Now, this is important because the same event can be seen entirely differently depending on the context that we look at it. And when we're looking at the psychology of the Gita, it is always a shift from a subjective way of looking at life to an objective way of looking at life. So in other words, going beyond our subjective, narrow standpoint. Now, it's not exactly a replacement of the standpoint, because in a wider context, you can still see the narrower context. So the narrower context is still there, and can be seen and understood, but it's broader. In other words, you might be angry with someone, and then suddenly at the same time this understanding comes in. You're aware that you're angry, you want to wring their necks because of what they've done, but you also understand that they haven't caused you to get upset. You're upset. There's a resuscitation going on. You may even have an impulse to attack them, but the understanding goes, no. So the broader context always includes the narrower context, but the narrower context never includes the broader context. So when you're in the narrow context, you are basically blind. Now, so here we have an understanding that we've gained through listening to the scriptures, listening to the teacher, and we've gained through that listening. We first of all discover something new, and we ponder it even more, and we start to establish a rather reasonably firm understanding of what has been said. Now, unless we live that understanding, it will wither away. It has to be established in us by our living it out. Now, this is what seriously sorts out the men from the boys or the women from the girls. Because you see, it's very easy to, in a classroom situation or a theoretical point, oh yes, people in events don't upset me, they're only instrumental in revealing a pain that's within me. That's easy to do. But when you're in the emotion, when you suddenly find yourself being angry at other people and blaming them, because, you see, if you blame them, it means that that understanding is not present. You see, the wonderful thing about our emotions is they're a mirror. So when we're upset or angry, they are a mirror. They can be a mirror because what they will do is they'll tell us what we're really thinking. And if I'm blaming someone and cross with someone and I want to retaliate, I believe that they have caused me pain. It doesn't matter what philosophy I have in my head. How I live is what tells me what my philosophy really is at the moment. Okay, because the thing is that how we live comes from how we understand life, or what our views and notions about life are. So, what happens here is that when we commit to living the vision, once we commit to living the vision that is presented to us in the scriptures, we have in one sense a dialectic between our normal standpoint, which has been formed in us and deterministically created, and another standpoint that has been discovered by our faculty of discrimination, and we commit to living it. So, here we go, we're committed. Now, the next moment, someone does something we don't like, or some circumstances are in a way that we don't like. We find ourselves straight away resisting, and we're upset, and we suddenly see ourselves blaming the situation. Now, this is a new perception. The fact that we can actually see ourselves blaming means that the understanding that we have gained is operating. Okay? So what happens is, in that situation, we go, hang on a minute there. What's happening here? So we can now pause. Now, this is very important. It's very, very important to bring our daily experiences and bring the light of what we've understood, to bring them to the light of our understanding. Because it's this understanding which will transform those experiences. So let's say, for example, you're angry with someone, you go, hang on a minute here, what's really happening here? This person's done this, and I don't like that. And so what I'm doing now is I'm examining, aren't I? And I'm inquiring, I'm going, is it really true? Is it really true that they're making me upset? Or is it the fact that they're only instrumental in revealing? So basically I'm recalling an understanding. And when I recall an understanding, what I do is I'm looking at what is happening in the light of an understanding that has been formed in me by listening to the teaching. And this is where things change, because when that understanding comes alive again and it takes up all the room, what you find is you still may be angry, but you're no longer blaming. And this is how our daily life can be transformed. I'm going to go more into this, but I just want to be clear here that this is what we mean by a cognitive shift, a shift in our way of seeing. It's not a shift in our thinking. You know, we can think this and change that, and well, anyone, you can read Vedanta books, you can get the ideas and all that stuff, but getting ideas and possessing ideas and knowing those ideas well has nothing to do with this cognitive shift. The cognitive shift is brought about by an understanding that has been formed in you through listening to the teacher, and so that your discrimination goes, yes, this is true. People and events do not hurt us. They are not to blame. All they do is they revivify or trigger or are only instrumental in revealing a pain that's already here. Now, when my faculty of discrimination, when I discover that for myself, that is an understanding. It is something that, it is not something that is being determined by an outside source, the scripture. It is actually now my understanding. I actually can see it that way. Now, I can forget that understanding because the force of habit of the old standpoints is there. However, I can always come back to it, and then I can actually look at situations from that standpoint, and when I do, the situation that I was 2 minutes ago furious about suddenly has an entirely different meaning for me. And this is what we mean by a cognitive shift. And this is the practical fruit of the teaching, is that right in the middle of our travails and personal upsets, when the cognitive shift happens, we are delivered from our normal reactions, and we can see clearly what is happening in a different way, and our mind remains clear and stable and not full of reactivity where we do stupid things.